Donald Trump will be reminded very quickly that the job that they've done has been a successful one, and ISIS hasn't gone away, and indeed still has the capacity in one form or another to hit America on American soil.
Alistair Dawber is our Washington correspondent for The Times and The Sunday Times. Welcome to the show, Alistair.
Hi, Ed. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. We always speak to you on a Thursday, but today is obviously incredibly pertinent given the horrific events that happened in New Orleans and indeed the what looks like another terror attack in Las Vegas. An ISIS flag was found in the terror attacker's truck in New Orleans. Joe Biden has held a news conference overnight. Let's hear what the president had to say.
We're tracking the explosion of a cyber truck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. Law enforcement and the intelligence community are investigating this as well, including whether there's any possible connection with the attack in New Orleans. Thus far, there's nothing to report on that score at this time. I directed my team to make sure every resource is made available to federal, state, and local law enforcement to complete the investigation in New Orleans quickly and to make sure there's no remaining threat to the American people.
Donald Trump said he would fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil. Now, Alistair, the political reaction in America has probably moved at some pace because there were these appalling initial reactions. I think I came across a tweet from Eric Trump saying, this was all Biden's fault, and the misinformation that this was somebody who had crossed the border 2 days ago, it was going to be weaponized very quickly. Now, of course, people have learned this was a US citizen, somebody born in Texas.
That's correct. Someone who worked for the Deloitte accountancy firm, someone who served for many, many years in the US military. And this, I think, really does present a problem for Donald Trump. We heard a lot on the campaign trail last year of how he wants to kick out of America illegal immigrants, about how America was being taken for a ride by China, NATO, any number of other countries and organizations. ISIS hardly got a look in, other than to say that Donald Trump often went on stage and said he defeated ISIS when he was first time in office. This obviously is something that's come out of the left field for him. It's something he has to deal with. The idea of homegrown terror, as I say, this guy was a soldier in New Orleans. He'd worked for Deloitte. This is not something that Donald Trump was expecting to deal with. And just listening to Joe Biden's clip there, he says that so far there's no link between what we know was a terrorist attack in New Orleans and the explosion of the truck in Vegas. Well, a lot of US media overnight are reporting that the attacker in Vegas and the person who is involved, we don't know exactly what it is yet in Vegas, served on the same military base. So it does look as though this is even wider than it was feared this time yesterday.
Oh, so there has been this established link between the two perpetrators, given their military service?
It's a reported link in several US media outlets overnight that they both served. We don't know the name of the person who was involved in Las Vegas. Of course, we've got to be very careful about how we label that incident. But it does appear from initial reports, and these may be corrected later, that the two individuals served on the same US military base.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it, how others play this? Because obviously Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel, for example, will probably use this to engage with American politicians on their support for Israel in the battles in the Middle East.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be a reminder, I think, or people like Benjamin Netanyahu will be very quick to remind the Americans that it's not just a problem in the Middle East, it's a problem on American soil as well. And one thing we've heard from Donald Trump is that he doesn't want to engage in a lot of these overseas conflicts. There are a great number of American soldiers based in the Middle East, in Jordan, Iraq. He's talking about withdrawing these people. These soldiers have done a great job, really, over the last 10 years or so to act as something of a bulwark against ISIS, to diminish it, to push it into small pockets of not particularly effective units. I think Donald Trump will be reminded very quickly that the job that they've done has been a successful one, and ISIS hasn't gone away, and indeed still has the capacity in one form or another to hit America on American soil.
Let's talk briefly about the election in Congress, the House of Representatives, of the current Speaker, Mike Johnson. He has to be re-elected with a new Congress. A reminder, obviously, most Times Radio listeners will be very aware that the Speaker of the House is a very powerful political figure. He's not a sort of neutral umpire in the way that our Speaker is. Is Mike Johnson's place secure? I think he has Donald Trump's backing, doesn't he?
He has Donald Trump's explicit backing, but that doesn't mean to say that his position is secure. He faces a re-election tomorrow in the House, as you say, for the new House coming into office in a couple of weeks' time. There are people that aren't very happy with Mike Johnson. Just before Christmas, we had a great row in the House over the extension of the debt ceiling, which is now the US debt is more than $30 trillion. A lot of Republican members think that's too high and it should be brought down. Mike Johnson, siding with Donald Trump, said, well, we need to sort of kick this into the long grass. We need to kick the can down the road. Let's not worry about this just now. That angered a lot of Republican members of Congress who now have Mike Johnson in their sights, and they are absolutely not going to vote for him. Yes, he has Donald Trump's support, but it's a test, I guess, of how popular Donald Trump is among Republican members of the House. We assume very, but maybe not quite as much as
Is there an alternative candidate?
Not at the moment. We had a great battle about 14 months ago when Mike Johnson, he was the candidate that appeared from nowhere.
That's right.
With a number of people who were more favoured being voted down by various different factions. He was the compromise candidate. At the moment, nobody's emerged, but like you say, it's a very powerful position, and there won't be any shortage of people who fancy their chances or fancy themselves with the gravel in the House should Mike Johnson fall.
Regardless of his politics and people's view of his politics, he's not been a bad speaker, has he?
He's been quite effective, been quietly effective.
Yeah.
I think his tactic really has been to keep as close to Donald Trump as he can be, and because the Republicans were so keen to present a united front during the course of last year, that served him pretty well. Now we've got the election out of the way, I think some Republican members of the House might be feeling that they can flex their muscles a little bit and don't have to be quite so on message and quite so loyal, which might spell trouble for Mike Johnson.
Yes, we'll see who prevails. It will be very interesting to see whether people are going to end their political careers by taking on the president's choice of speaker in Mike Johnson or further them or not. That's Alistair Dawber, the Washington correspondent of the Times and Sunday Times, bringing us up to date on the political reaction to the terror attack in New Orleans, but also the important political issue of the re-election of the Speaker of the House, which is an important political event in American politics.